And what we learned is that setbacks really aren't failures unless you fail to seize the opportunity for growth. Not only was this one of the biggest challenges we faced, but it also was the biggest catalyst to get us moving.
Yeah.
And say, you know what, we're either going to lose it or we're going to do something.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Blended Family Coaching Show, where you'll discover how to move your step family from just surviving to truly thriving.
Grab your headphones and listen in as we share practical, real-life strategies for building healthy bonds,
Understanding the kids' perspective,
romance and partnership,
parenting with great teamwork.
and yes, even co-parenting with a difficult ex.
We're Mike and Kim Anderson, and we believe with the right tools, every step couple can overcome the common challenges of step family life.
Join us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations to discover how you can lead your family with confidence and create the future you really want.
Well, welcome to episode 51.
Yes,
we are
hello.
always so glad to have you joining us on this podcast. You know, we've been noticing that more people are finding the show, and we're really grateful to be hearing from you.
Yes.
We recently received a review from a couple on Apple Podcasts. Their username is BDazzle. I love that. And one of the things they said was, we have made a lot of mistakes along the way in this step family experience, but learning these tools and seeing our experience in others has been so helpful. Man, what a great comment that is. Like, we do learn from each other. And, you know, I have to say that as Kim and I get to support and coach more and more couples, we keep learning and growing in our own marriage, and what a privilege it is to learn together. Yeah. In fact, not to jump too far ahead, but over the next couple of weeks, we're going to introduce you to some couples that we've had the privilege to support for quite a while, but more about that later.
Yeah, we're excited about that.
That's right. So BDazzle, whoever you are, thank you so much for this review and the comments. And by the way, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, please do so you don't miss out on any of the upcoming episodes. We've got some really fun things planned. And while you're subscribing, would you consider leaving a rating or a review? We're up to 47 ratings at the time of this recording over on Apple Podcasts now. And we would love to get to 50 in celebration of just now passing our 50th episode last week. So if you're feeling inclined, just click a star rating in the app for us, and we would really appreciate it.
Yeah,
okay?
That'd be great.
All right, well, let's get going with this week's episode.
Yeah. So navigating blended family life can sometimes, it feels like this is an ongoing experiment, right? I mean, there's so much trial and error along the way. And like our review from BDazzle just expressed that they've made some mistakes along the way. And we do make mistakes. There's lots of trial and error. So we try different approaches around bonding as a family. Maybe we attempt to parent the kids using each of our parenting styles and see what happens, right?
Yeah, or neither of our parenting styles.
Or maybe we've tried every way we can think of to communicate with each other and resolve disagreements. Or could it be that we've made various attempts and efforts to collaborate with the ex and that other home? There's all kinds of things we're navigating, right? We often start out with these high expectations, right? And we try some different approaches, and sometimes, probably more often than we'd like, we experience disappointment when things don't work out the way we expected them to. And when we experience these setbacks, we often feel like we failed.
Sure.
Like we just can't do this. And that's when discouragement can set in and keep us stuck.
Yeah, I think you're really right. You know, we all want to move beyond our failures. But when we're left feeling discouraged and we really aren't sure what to do next, we can sometimes get stuck there. And that creates more frustration because there seems to be no forward movement.
Nothing
Our
changes.
issues just keeps going unresolved, right? Disappointment, resentment, even anger become the norm. And round we go on this merry-go-round of discouragement.
Yeah, it's really tough.
Yeah, you know, marriage is tough under any circumstances. Step-family marriages fall prey to the common issues of escalating conflict over things like money, sex, parenting, just like a first family couple does. But really, it's the unique and the hidden step-family challenges that are really insidious.
Yeah.
They often cause conflict, and they can cause ongoing discouragement.
Sure.
We know all about that trap of discouragement, don't we, honey?
Sure do.
Yeah. You know, when you're faced with a really tough situation, maybe things are out of your control, it doesn't go as planned, or it just explodes in conflict, we know how that feels.
Yeah.
We know what you're experiencing. Yeah. Whatever it is, it can definitely feel like a setback. Mm-hmm. You're left feeling emotionally drained, hurt, confused, and stressed out. And setbacks just feel discouraging. Yeah. They kind of pile on top of one another sometimes.
They're heavy.
Yeah.
You know, in our blended family journey, we have experienced seasons of discouragement that went hand in hand with pain.
Sure.
Of course, it's so painful. We've got painful regrets. We've got feelings of inadequacy, being overwhelmed, and even feeling kind of that hopeless and defeated feeling. We've definitely been there.
Yeah.
Now, we often talk about this story of our disastrous camping trip.
Yeah, you've probably heard this if you've been around for any length of time with us.
Yeah, and just to review, we had actually come to some agreement around setting some limits on my daughter Annika's cell phone use during our vacation, our camping trip.
Yep.
But then I got sick and she got sick, and I failed to enforce the limit with her cell phone, and Mike felt that I'd abandoned our agreement and that I'd kind of refused to follow through, which I did. Now, this story is really about our biggest fight.
Yeah. Really,
it was a blowout. But actually, this big fight was an accumulation of many, many little disagreements, lots of misunderstandings, and mounting tensions between us.
Yeah.
It all just came to a head on this camping trip, and it was just one more big setback that we were experiencing.
Yeah, and it hit us at a very challenging time, actually. You know, this experience was about 10 years into our marriage, but it was right on the tail end of a 3-year battle with Kim's ex in the court system, in the family court system.
Yeah.
And we were in a really vulnerable time at that time.
We were drained.
Yeah, we had poured so much energy and time and money into this excruciating court battle. And then we were kind of celebrating that it was over. We wanted to do this family trip, not knowing actually how fragile we were.
Yeah, we were running on empty in our relationship. Sure. We were pretty drained. And it's funny to think back to our biggest fight ever and realize it was just about my daughter's cell phone use. Like, big deal, right? It's such a little thing. It
seems like a big deal.
Yeah, at the time. I mean, thinking back, it's like, well, that was really insignificant, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
It wasn't at the time.
It was really about so much more. All our blended family issues that had been festering and went unresolved over the years. And this trip was actually the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so significant for us. At that point, we were so discouraged. We were ready to call it quits.
Yeah, it almost ended us.
Yeah. I remember driving home from that trip, and, you know, it was...
The silence?
Yeah, 3 days of silence.
6-hour drive?
Well, followed by the 3-day standoff. But I remember driving home thinking, you know, I can't do this anymore. I just can't do this anymore. We failed. This is not going to work. And the thoughts, you know, that I had were really, we need to end it. We can't figure this out. And it was so discouraging.
I agree. I mean, I felt like we were done, and I was also really, really angry. I think that was one of the points in our marriage where I felt that dynamic of being the stranded stranger really stuck on the outside. And if you're not quite sure what that stranded stranger term means, go back and check out episodes 21, 22, and 23. We talk about the stranded stranger trap teammate. But I was so stuck in this stranded stranger feeling that I just knew that I would always be stuck on the outside and it would never get better. And that was the self-talk that I had going on. I was so discouraged and I was ready to throw in the towel.
Yeah. And I was that trapped teammate on the inside, trying to make you happy, trying to take care of my daughter and make her happy. And anything I did, someone was going to be mad. And I believe at that point in our marriage, we had not learned about the trapped teammate, stranded stranger dynamic being on the inside or the outside. that was something that we learned about later.
Yeah.
And it was
we were like, oh,
shocking.
that's what
Yeah.
we're experiencing. Yeah.
But we didn't know.
And this was a major setback for us. And we saw it as a failure, or we are failing. And I remember even thinking that I'm failing. I'm a failure.
Yeah. I remember
really
thinking, I
that.
can't do this.
Yeah. We've had lots of challenges throughout our family's journey. This was a major setback, but like you said, it was also an accumulation of a whole lot of little setbacks along the way. And what we learned is that setbacks really aren't failures unless you fail to seize the opportunity for growth. Not only was this one of the biggest challenges we faced, but it also was the biggest catalyst to get us moving.
Yeah.
And say, you know what, we're either going to lose it or we're going to do something about it.
It's been 10 years since that camping trip, and we've learned a lot from this setback.
That's right. Now, if you want a formula for success as a blended family, here it is. Take the time to intentionally learn from your setbacks and then identify the next best step to move forward. That's the formula.
Got to keep at it.
I know that sounds way oversimplified, and I guess in a way it is. But at the core of getting out of that trap of discouragement, that's essentially what you need to do.
Yeah.
But don't worry, we've got you covered. We're not just going to leave you hanging with just that one thing. There's some practical things that you can do that are going to help you to learn and then take a next step as you navigate all these challenges that are coming your way.
And you will have challenges.
Yeah, that's right. The blended family journey is really about growth, but growth doesn't usually look like a steady upward movement or this continual improvement up and to the right.
Wouldn't that be
right?
nice?
It's a dance. It's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And that step back sometimes feels really terrible. But it's normal. And it's really how we choose to handle these steps back or setbacks that will ultimately determine our family's long-term outcome, or what we like to call playing the long game.
Yeah.
We love this quote because it reminds us of what's really important. Listen to this. Playing the long game is learning from not being stellar or fabulous all the time. The daily annoyances, failures, and roadblocks that can get us down become reframed as opportunities for learning and growth. So instead of quote unquote screwing it up, we're actually learning ways of doing it better the next time. It's the mistakes and tough times that are more important than doing something right or easily the first time. Sometimes we call this perseverance or grit. And it is the key in long-term success. That ability to try and try again, just like the little engine that could, and to learn from failures is inherently linked to a longer-term plan. We're so excited to let you know about something brand new we've created just for you.
We've realized that with so many episodes available here on the show, it might feel a bit overwhelming to find the topics that matter most to you. That's why we've created a simple tool for you to receive a personalized playlist focused on your current struggle or your biggest challenge.
That's right. It's called the Blended Family Breakthrough Quiz. You'll answer just a few questions, and based on your responses, we'll email you a curated custom playlist of episodes that are specific to you.
This simple quiz will direct you to the most impactful episodes that pertain to you personally and keep you on track in your journey of discovery, learning, and growth. So, scroll all the way to the bottom of the show notes for this episode and click the link to take the Blended Family Breakthrough Quiz today.
Okay, let's get back to the discussion.
Yeah, I just love that quote. I'm not sure where I found that. I stumbled upon that when I was doing some research on perseverance, and I just love it because it just hits the nail right on the head.
Yeah.
So how do we seize the opportunity in the midst of discouragement and really move forward with new insight and growth? So we're going to give you one simple tool here today that you can use right away, get started with this. And then over the next couple episodes, we'll be sharing a few more practical tools that can help you turn discouragement into growth.
Yes.
And we're even going to have couples, like Mike mentioned, joining us to share some of their experiences and how they overcame discouragement.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. But for today, let's talk about one tool you can use to start turning your setbacks into growth opportunities.
Yeah.
And the first one is called Do a Debrief.
Do a debrief.
A debrief is a great tool. So when you run into a setback, once the dust has settled a bit, agree that you'll get together to debrief what happened and schedule a time to connect. Don't just sweep it under the rug once the dust has settled or pretend it didn't happen. You want to learn from it.
Yeah. And you're going to choose a time when you're both calmed down.
Right.
Yeah.
You want to emotionally prepare yourself for the debrief. So make sure you're well fed, you're rested, and you're in an open frame of mind. So do your best to show up and leave negativity behind and choose to have a learning or a curiosity mindset as you go into the meeting. And you want to choose a place that's comfortable, maybe one of your favorite places, somewhere that's quiet and uninterrupted. So definitely away from the disruption of kids and all of that, so you can really debrief.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize one thing you just said is we're going to show up and leave negativity behind. We're showing up as a team to say, how can we do better next time?
Yeah, we're not blaming.
Not to dredge up the argument again and point fingers, but we're really focused on how we can move forward.
Yeah.
And the way we're going to do this is a really simple, practical tool. It's a great self-coaching tool, actually, called having a win, W-I-N, conversation that's really self-focused on us as a couple, not on blaming.
We're not blaming.
So we're going to put our learning into action. And here's what WIN is. It's an acronym. And here's what it stands for. The W is, what did you do really well? Okay, so those are things you want to keep doing well.
The W is well.
The I is for improve. What could we improve? So if you could have a do-over in this situation, what might you change or improve about what happened? Okay, so that's the I. And the N is for next time. So what will you commit to doing differently next time as you move forward? So we're looking for specific insights, right? Some strategies that we might use when we're faced with a similar situation in the future. And so we want to capture what we've learned and even maybe write it down so that we can refer to it next time we find ourselves in a similar situation and go, oh, wait a second. We talked about this. We actually already had a plan. We know what we want to keep because we know what we did well. We know what we want to improve, and we know what we committed to doing next time. And if we can make that commitment to each other, that can be a really powerful way to move forward. All right. Should we give them an example?
Yeah.
Okay. So we've been talking about this camping trip, and I wonder, we're just kind of imagining for a moment, we got to go back about a decade and think about, well, what might it have looked like if we had been able to get ourselves into a position, into a conversation, to have this win conversation together and debrief it, right? So
what could
let's
we have
just
learned?
talk about that. Yeah, what could we have learned? Well, what do you think we actually did well on that trip?
Well, we did a great job intentionally planning how we were going to handle Annika's overused cell phone habit.
True. We talked about it a lot before.
We knew it was going to be an issue. So we sat down, we talked it through, and we actually came into agreement. We wanted to be able to connect with her. We didn't want her to be glued to the phone. And we wanted the trip to be a time that we all spend together. So we did have a really great cooperative conversation, the two of us, about what those limits would be.
Yeah.
And then I feel like I did a good job communicating that to Annika as well before we left.
Yeah, I think you're right. We planned it together, and then we started implementing the plan together even before we got started on the trip. Yeah, I think you're right. We did that really well.
Yeah.
Well, what about an improvement? What do you think we might have been able to improve?
Well, if I could have a do-over of that trip, I would improve my communication with you. Rather than making the decision to just kind of let the limits slide because Annika was sick and I was just really too tired to uphold the agreement.
Yeah.
I wish I had been more assertive and direct with you about how I was feeling and that I needed some flexibility. If I had stated what I needed rather than just kind of letting it slide.
Yeah, you kind of just went quiet and let it play out rather than communicating.
Yeah,
with me. I agree with that.
Yeah, by staying silent and just letting things happen the way they did, I left you in the dark is what I did, which really magnified your feelings of being that stranded stranger on the outside. I kind of pushed you to the outside by just shutting down. And so that's what I would have done different.
Yeah. And it's interesting, like communication is so important and doing it well is really important. Right. And I think when I think about what I could improve, it's definitely related to communication as well, and kind of similar to yours rather than just letting things play out. I could have been more proactive rather than reactive in the way that I responded, because I remember I was angry and I let anger take over because I felt abandoned. In a lot of
betrayed.
ways. Yeah. And even though like, we kind of tease now on this whole thing about my abandonment issues, which I do have, and they're real. But now we're 20 years into marriage, and look, you're still here. I can see you haven't abandoned me. You haven't gone anywhere. And even at that time, it had been a decade already. We had been married, and you hadn't gone anywhere. But yet I let that anger take over, and I didn't allow myself the time and the space to calm down and think rationally. I started throwing everything in the car, and the kids are going, what is going on? Like, what is, they didn't even know what was happening.
3 days early, you packed up.
They're like, I thought we had a couple more nights here, right? And so I ended up disappointing everybody in the family because I reacted rather than responding. And that was, I definitely could have improved that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Last week we talked about how to communicate openly with each other and the benefits of assertive communication. And you went towards the more aggressive or the passive aggressive.
I was passive aggressive, for sure.
And I steered towards passivity completely and kind of just stayed silent. If you want to go back and listen, that was last week's episode. We'll link 50. That in the show notes because how you choose to communicate with each other is just so important.
Yeah. So it sounds like the overarching theme of what we could have improved really is around communication.
Definitely.
For both of us, even though it was a different type of change that each of us needed to make.
Yeah.
Okay. So we actually did communication well early on in the beginning when we were planning and all of that. And then we totally stunk up our communication in the middle of this trip, right? So that's something that we could improve. Now, what if we had actually been able to do this win conversation and said, well, what could we do differently next time or in the future? Right? Because what actually happened was we drove home with a giant standoff. And then we, before we finally broke and said we need to go get some help for our marriage, we were right on the verge of just throwing in the towel.
We were stuck in discouragement for quite a while. It was awful.
Yeah, that would not have been a good next step for us. So what if we had actually been able to sit down and analyze this and turn this setback into a learning opportunity for growth? We might have been able to make some agreements about how we would move forward next time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we could have brainstormed some things.
Totally. I think we would have brainstormed and come up with much better ways to handle this type of situation in the future. I mean, even 10 years ago, I think we had the maturity to do that. We were just so locked into our emotion and letting them take over that we couldn't see the forest for the trees. Right?
Yeah, we weren't as good at managing our emotions back then.
Yeah. And we were struggling through that trip, but we were struggling even leading up to that trip. And we just almost didn't make it because we let discouragement take over.
Yeah.
But it didn't have to be that way.
So what if we were coaching a couple now that had just experienced a similar setback as our camping trip? And we hear about this all the time, this dynamic coming out. How would we coach a couple through this win conversation?
Well, certainly we would ask about the W, what did you do really well?
Sure.
And I would challenge couples to really spend some time there, because sometimes when we're feeling that pain, we don't want to think about what we did well, or we think, oh, no, nothing went well.
Yeah, if we think we failed, it's all a big failure.
Exactly. And that's an important place to get us into the curiosity mindset.
Yeah.
We don't want to skip
And we
that
want to
step.
hold on to the things we did well. We don't want to
Exactly.
throw them all out.
That's right. Then we would ask the I question. Okay, well, if that's what you did well, what is it that we want to improve? And that's important in the progression, because now we're already in a curiosity mindset, and usually our emotions are a little bit more calm. That's why we go in that order. And then, of course, we would talk about next time. And, if we had a couple in this same exact situation and they landed on the same kind of thing that we said, then we would talk about going and getting help for learning better communication skills.
Yeah.
And that would have been our next step. And in some ways, that was our next step. We just had to get about it in a roundabout sort of way. And it took us a long time to get there. It was really valuable.
And
so
not
I think
just
that would
the
be the next step.
communication skills, but the managing your emotion skills.
Exactly.
We've come a long way over the last 10 years. And one of the ways we've really developed this is through the Relate Strong method.
Yeah, you're right.
That we talked about last week. And we're going to put a link in the show notes on that too, if you want to take advantage of our special pricing that we've got going through October 1st on Relate Strong, where we really learn that skill of managing emotions so that we can stay connected,
Right.
even when there's conflict. And that's one thing that we coach couples, because it's so crucial that we're able to do that.
Learning how to each individually regulate our own emotions has probably been one of the most powerful ways that we've learned new communication. So I think often our next step is, when we talk about this story, it just comes back to how do we learn better communication skills and learn that. Now, that's not a blanket statement for every situation.
No, that was us.
But in this situation, we were just so locked in battle that we couldn't see anything else.
Yeah. I mean, and that definitely kept us stuck for a long time. We'd hit this pain point. You'd blow up in anger. I'd shut down and go into avoidance mode. And because we weren't able to regulate those strong, painful emotions in the moment of conflict, we would stay disconnected.
Yeah.
We just couldn't connect and resolve anything. And, we wanted to avoid more conflict. At least I did. So we didn't do this debrief.
Right. We avoided that. We just kind of pushed it under the rug, and we didn't want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah. And this is why we had this long festering list of unresolved issues that led to that last straw of the camping trip disaster that almost ended our marriage.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk a little bit about something that maybe is smaller, that's not this gigantic thing, maybe more recent, wasn't a decade ago, right? But actually was just in the past couple of weeks. And I know we talk a lot about parenting, but you know what? Parenting is one of the number one reasons that people come to us.
Huge pain point for blended families.
So recently, our mutual son has gotten his driver's license, and he is required the first 6 month period that he is not to do certain things.
Right. There's a restriction.
Yep. There's a restriction. He can't have friends in the car. He can't be out, after a certain point at night and all that. It's Washington state laws. And so we found out that he broke one of those rules recently. And so I had been thinking about this infraction that our son created, like for a day before I even shared it with you. And then when I came to you, I said, hey, here's what I think we should do. And you agreed with it. You went with it right away. And then we sat down with Jacob. We told him exactly what was going to happen. We told him what the consequences would be. And for the most part, it went by fairly
without
peacefully.
Disagreement.
Yeah, without any major disagreement. But I'm sitting here thinking, as we're talking about this win conversation, that, we haven't debriefed that. And so right here, while we're recording, I wonder what it would look like to have a win conversation around this parenting thing that we could just learn from and maybe do something differently next time. So what might have gone really well in that conversation? What thoughts do you have about what went well?
Well, I think one of the reasons why I agreed with your processing and what you had already thought of for a consequence was that it fit the crime really well. Like you weren't grounding him, you weren't taking away his phone, you weren't doing all these unrelated things.
Yeah.
You said, I think we need to restrict his driving. And because it happened during a sleepover, the infraction, he needs to be restricted from sleepovers.
Right.
And so those two things were related to the crime. And that's what I think in your processing, you did really well.
Consequences fit the crime.
Yeah, which you're really good at coming up with great consequences. And so I think that was good.
Yeah. I think another thing we did well was, we managed our disappointment in him well. He's a really trustworthy kid.
Yeah.
And it was disappointing, but we also, when we handled it with him, we did it in a way that wasn't demeaning.
Yeah,
and,
it was
and we
loving.
Didn't get too hung up. Yeah. Okay. So we did some things well. What could we improve? Sometimes it's hard to think about those things. We want to think we did it well. We want to think we did it right. When I think back on this, I think there's something I could have definitely improved. When I came to you, I had already been thinking through this whole deal, and I already had everything laid out in my mind of exactly what I wanted to do. And I kind of laid it out for you, exactly what I wanted to do. And I think rather than saying, hey, I just discovered this, here's what Jacob chose to do, here's what I think we should do as a response, what do you think? I think it would have been a lot better if I had said, hey, I've discovered this is something that Jacob, had an infraction here. I've got some ideas on what I think we could do, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts are first.
Right.
So rather than being a little bit more
controlling.
I suppose controlling around it, I could have invited you into the conversation first, and then we could have been more collaborative in how we worked it out. We may have still come to the same result, but it would have brought us together as a team rather than me dictating and you just kind of saying, okay, I guess that makes sense.
I agree with that. I mean, I didn't have any objection to your thoughts, but it might have caused me to come up with some other things too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it would have challenged you to think through it rather than just going, okay, we'll do it.
And given me some time to process. You'd had a day to process the infraction, whereas I didn't even have any idea he'd done anything wrong at that point.
That's even a better improvement, where I could have said, but I really want to hear your thoughts. Do you want to talk about that now, or would you like to wait a couple hours or talk about it tomorrow?
Yeah, because we know I'm a slower processor than you. So,
I like that improvement. So next time, this improvement thing and the I and the N can be really similar. And so remembering that the I is the insight that we're drawing from our discussion and our learning and going, okay, if I had a do-over, what might I like to have changed?
Yeah.
The N is a commitment to what I'm going to do differently next time. So I can commit right now, publicly. Now everybody listening can hold me accountable, right? Everybody's like, did Mike actually follow through with that? That the next time something like this happens and I become aware, I actually have two alternative next steps. One, I could immediately call you or reach out to you and say, hey, I just discovered this, and I think we both need to be thinking about how we're going to handle this so that I'm not spending 12 hours thinking about it before you even find out about it.
You kind of clued me in.
That could be one option. Or if I just can't because we're not in proximity or we can't get a hold of each other or whatever, then what I said earlier, approaching you and saying, hey, this is what happened. I've got some thoughts. I'd love for you to think about that for, how much time do you need and share with me before I tell you what I'm thinking.
So a more collaborative approach is what you're committing to next time.
Yeah, I think so. I think that could have led to a much more productive conversation.
And I think it's important we talk about how, this situation happened recently. It didn't lead to a big blowout fight or a big disagreement, but we can have these win conversations even around things that, went okay.
Exactly.
Because we can still keep learning and growing.
That's right.
And that's really important to continue.
Yeah, there you go. So I hope that was valuable, just kind of an impromptu win conversation.
Yeah, and when we can do that, we're really resolving the small issues even,
Yep.
so that we don't have these long festering list of unresolved issues
Yep.
that lead to that big, huge blowout.
Yeah,
You
just
can
like
actually avoid those big, huge
Yes.
blowouts if you're doing these win conversations and debriefing the small
the way.
stuff.
Yeah.
Because the last thing we want for you is these big, huge blowouts that
Right.
lead to discouragement and could lead to the end of your marriage, honestly.
Yeah. As blended family couples, we're facing lots of unique challenges that first family couples don't have to face. And that's one of the reasons that second marriages, the rate of divorce is actually double that of first marriages. And it's not all that surprising when we think about all the little things and the big things, all those setbacks that lead to us feeling so discouraged. And if you stay stuck in that discouragement too long, it is easy to get to that place where you and I were of, I just want to throw in the towel. I just want to this is too hard.
I can't do this.
When we start having those thoughts, that might be an indicator that, hey, we need to actually ramp it up on how we're going to overcome discouragement and keep us moving forward as a couple and as a family. And we know because that's exactly where we've been along our journey.
Yeah, I mean, discouragement is so common for couples in blended family dynamics. And that's the reason why we actually decided to tackle this head on and share some of these practical ways that we've learned to overcome discouragement over the years so that you don't have to stay stuck there.
Yeah.
Please don't stay stuck there.
Yeah, exactly.
And this episode is just part one, like Mike mentioned, part one of 3 that we're doing on overcoming discouragement. And we want to encourage you to listen through all 3 episodes. Okay, the next 2, like we said, are going to feature some couples that we've coached through some really tough setbacks. And they're going to share their stories, their personal insights with us. You don't want to miss the next 2 episodes.
Yeah, and I love that we get to do this because you probably have experienced discouragement along the way. But you're not the only ones. No. You are not alone. And we're not the only couple who experienced it either. So we want to be able to share more and more, just like Bedazzle challenged us to, that, hey, you're not the only ones. So remember this, a setback isn't a failure unless you fail to seize the opportunity for growth.
There's always opportunity for growth.
And this that we talked about today is only one tool that you can use. And we're going to talk about more in the coming episodes. But when you experience that setback, rather than letting discouragement set in, you're going to let the dust settle a bit. You're going to get to a place where you can have a reasonable conversation together. And then you're going to do a debrief by using that win conversation. So W is what did you do well? I is what could you improve? So if you had a do-over, how would you improve it? And N is that commitment of what will you do differently next time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't forget the definition of success that you want to hold on to is what have we learned as we continue to move forward together.
Yeah.
We're always learning and growing because the journey of blended family life isn't perfect. It's just not. It's messy. It's painful and it will throw you for a loop. But remember, you're playing for the long game here. So all of those daily annoyances, those failures and setbacks that can get you down, and they can be reframed as opportunities for learning and growth. So we're going to shoot for imperfect progress here, not perfection.
Right. That's right. All right. So don't miss the next couple of episodes when we get to talk to 2 other couples, and we're going to talk about more practical strategies to help you overcome discouragement in your blended family journey. And so we want to give you some great insights from those couples, build those strategies, and really live them out well as we continue to make this imperfect progress in our blended families.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So that makes this episode a wrap.
Until next time.